Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, but you probably already knew that. So this week we're going to do another helicopter build. Now I know that is not a helicopter. I don't have this one unlocked, so it's going to be just looking at the World War II tank hunter in the background for this video, but obviously the tank hunters move into helicopters, so the build is still relevant. So this week's build, the Eagle. Now, I decided that I was going to do this build about 2 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, give or take. I had a viewer message me in game and he wanted to show me his helicopters, and I'd already decided that this week I was going to cover that build, and he already had that build. So Piranha, if you're watching, you don't need to watch this. You can watch this if you want my thoughts on the build that you have already. There might be some slight changes in terms of it, but what is this build? What do we need? Well, this is just a straight up glass cannon helicopter. It is all about pumping out as much damage over every single thing you can possibly imagine in a short span of time as possible. This is going to have a lot of mechanics on it that kind of work well together. It's good in sustained fights, providing it's not getting hit. Now, this is a big caveat with nearly all of the helicopters, providing they are not getting hit. As soon as a helicopter takes damage in a battlefield, it massively decreases its capability out in the field. So these are always flanking units. They're not MBTs, guys. They're not designed to go toe to toe with the enemy team. You're designed to hop over, hunt down, and flank. So we're looking for a high damage helicopter. So as always, guys, make sure your headsets and headphones are in and on. Make sure your other half is watching Jurassic Park, because why not switch it up to a bit of sci-fi horror from the early 90s. And make sure you got yourself a drink, maybe some snacks, because we're going to look at the build. As always, we're going to look at the tech, we're going to look at the modern tech, we'll look at the unit components and parts, we'll be looking at the officers, the officer trained skills, and we'll finish off with a summary. But first, as I attempt to do always, which I inevitably always forget something and mess up the order, we shall look at the unit and its stats. As always, we'll look at it in the S1 category, which is just a standard, really. I feel like 8.1 is a really nice standard to look at, because it goes up and down from there. It sits nicely in the middle for Conquest. And yeah, we'll see what information we can get out of the Eagle. Straight into the 8.1 variant, we're looking at a pen depth of 316, a troop speed of 47, and a sloped armor of 124. And much like last week's helicopter build, we're not really interested in the sloped armor or the HP of the unit, because at no stage is this helicopter designed to take damage. That's key. This is designed to deal damage. This is designed to pop out of your base. It's designed to fire shots and retreat. It's designed to flank, hunt down, and destroy. It's designed to be added to an AG. So the pen depth and the firepower are what we're really interested in. 316 and 1.48, as we can see here. Now, shall we just compare that quickly to, let's say, the Martyr MBT? So we have a sloped armor of 249, so that's easily going to pen this thing out in the field, and we've got a massive amount of firepower on it compared to the Lib MBT. Again, we're easily going to pen this. We're going to deal we're going to out damage it, hopefully, providing it doesn't shoot us. We're looking at being actually slightly slower than this MBT at 47 kph versus the 48. You're not going to catch up to this MBT anytime soon, but you are going to pen it, but it is absolutely going to destroy you out in the field if it catches you. And of course, a super heavy, we don't have enough rating to reliably pen this. It doesn't mean that we won't pen, it just means that every shot is not guaranteed. It is if you're over the sloped armor rating, but that's okay because we're going to utilize a number of mechanics in this build, so we should be able to be just as lethal to these super heavies should we encounter them. And as you can see here, we've got the information for the helicopter unit. As always, we have penetration and all terrain, so we're going to deal pen damage, and we are going to ignore terrain and obstacles. We also have the camp bonus of firepower, enhanced firepower, more firepower than any of the other camps, which is going to be key for this build because we are looking at doing a pure damage build. No doubt you are sick of seeing this tech tree, so what can we learn from this tech tree today? Well, modern fire control systems, we are extremely interested in this critical strike rate of 5% and the bonus of 50%. This is where the start of our build is going to come together, and we are definitely going to be wanting to utilize this as much as possible. Tank destroyers by name. Tank destroyers by nature. Every time a tank hunter or a helicopter penetrates enemy armor, its firepower is increased by 5% for 4 seconds and stacks up to 3 times. As we've already stated, this thing is going to reliably penetrate any MBT on the field and any other helicopter on the field, so we are not going to be worried too much there. But this does lend towards our second stat that we're looking at, which is indeed firepower, if you didn't guess already. So naturally we're going to be looking at things like load time reduction, damage intensity, firepower as our main stats we want to max out. If we do not max out this tree, we at least want to max out those ones. So damage intensity, which is here, damage intensity bonus versus artillery, damage intensity bonus versus tanks, and I will say that we will probably want to pick up the damage intensity bonus versus infantry because we are going to be utilizing a number of additional mechanics other than just the penetration, which we can actually use to damage infantry with. Naturally, we're after the tank firepower, obviously the penetration damage, and the load time reduction. These also need to be maxed out. And actually we're going to want to max out the firing accuracy as well, because a more reliable chance to hit is definitely going to lend our way further down the line when it comes to this build. We're not so interested in having the HP or the resistance bonuses maxed out because this is a pure damage build. As long as we get our damaging modifiers maxed out, unless you are maxing out this tree, as always, these are the only ones you really want to be targeting. Right, on to the modern then. And at the halfway point, because as always with the modern, we are looking at the halfway and back to the start. We're not looking at all the way to the end because it takes a very long time to get to the end. So anything we get beyond this point is obviously just a bonus. Whenever a tank hunter or a helicopter troop penetrates enemy armor, it gains firepower bonus of 5% and reduces the target speed by 35% for 5 seconds. This we're also going to play on. Much like before, we are after the intensity and firepower bonuses. Everything else is pretty much a minimum. Also, the garrisoned intensity bonus is going to be extremely useful for you if you are a helicopter player or a tank player. I am just going to point this out because this is also going to lend into the build in a more defensive role. as always with the parts, we are just going to see if there are any variants on any of the parts, and if there are variants on any of the parts, which ones should we use, and also we are going to look at the slot 4 maintenance supplies and which ones we should be using. So as we can see here, there doesn't seem to be any difference in our components that we can choose here. They're all pen depth firepower, which is extremely useful because they're also load time. This is perfect for the build, absolutely perfect for the build. In slot 2, the exterior weapon slot, we have accuracy and firepower. Again, this is perfect for the build because this is exactly what we're after. And in the engine slot, we do have HP and troop speed, which is going to help us hunt down a couple of the MBTs, but realistically do not be expecting to chase MBTs down this build. It is more of a case of if they happen to cross your path, you are going to absolutely destroy them if they are not shooting at you, and that is key. I cannot stress that enough throughout this video. And for the 4 slot, we are looking at double firepower because we're going to need as much firepower as we can potentially muster with this build. The more firepower we can get, the better we're going to be doing. Here's a tank hunter of the same camp that we're looking at. Obviously this is a 5.1. Just to reiterate, firepower affects your damage, it affects your fire rate or rate of fire, and it affects your firing accuracy. So this is why we're looking at firepower, because we're looking at absolutely leveling enemy targets with a high rate of fire and a high amount of damage. For our first officer, we're looking at Rapier. Now, as always with these, we're going to go through the skills, the reasons why we're using those skills, and then we'll look at the training and how that enhances those skills, and then we'll go on to the summary from there after we've done the same with the aid. So why do we want Rapier, and why is he going to be in the captain slot? The first reason is going to be for this damage coefficient of 1500 and the critical strike rate bonus of 20. Now, as you remember from the start of the video that was mere moments ago, of course, as you will remember from the start of the video that was merely moments ago, of course, we were talking about the critical strike. So we've got a base rate, okay, of 5% critical strike. He also gives us a plus 20 for critical strike. So that means our base critical strike rating with just this officer and the tech is at 25%. That's 1 in 4 shots is going to be a critical strike. Once his tactical skill is applied, we get a bonus 20%. Okay, that brings us up to a 45% critical strike rating, and we're getting a bonus firepower of 30%, which is going to play towards the amount of damage we're doing. We get damage intensity bonus, but here's the clincher with this one. Whenever this officer's tank or helicopter troop lands a critical strike bonus with its normal attacks, it increases the damage intensity by 2%, goes up to 5% for 8 seconds, and can stack up to 5 times. So we're looking at a 25% intensity bonus. So we can go down the road of stacking intensity over firepower. However, we're looking at being able to calculate more skill damage in this scenario, so more firepower is ideal, and you'll see why as we go through the skills. Now, this one is quite important because it upgrades his skill animosity. Once he's awakened, whenever the helicopter or tank troop lands a critical strike, as we just stated, goes up to 5% for 8 seconds. But here is the extra bit, which is going to really start dealing damage. At max stacks, the troop deals additional skill damage whenever it lands a critical strike, 400 damage coefficient. This effect can be triggered once every 4 seconds. Now, a standard cycle is 8 seconds plus 2 seconds, so you've got 8 second charge time skill attack, 2-second charge time, skill attack, 8-second charge time, skill attack, back on the captain, 2-second charge time, skill attack, back on the aide. That's the standard skill time. So you're looking at roughly a total of 10 seconds. So that means in the space of 10 seconds, if you get a critical strike at the start, you're going to deal an additional 400 coefficiency bonus. If you get a critical strike at the end of that 10 seconds or halfway through, you're going to get another additional 400. So that means in reality he doesn't do 1500 skill damage. He can deal up to fuck, just had a brain fart. So he can deal up to a potential of 2300 skill damage, which makes him very, very, very good at basically wiping out HP from another unit, because obviously, you know, damage resistance is great and everything. It will lower the amount of damage that's being done by a skill shot, but ultimately skill shots are the highest form of damage. That's why they take so long to charge, and that's why they're so devastating. This is a build where we're going to capitalize on that, and we're going to use the critical strikes as a crux to get us through, because they're chance-based damage attack. So that's his skills and why we're using him. We want him specifically as captain though, because we want, once that first critical strike goes off, 100% we want that critical strike rating to go up. Sorry, I said that wrong. That's misleading. The reason why we want him as the captain more than any other reason on this build is because we want, as soon as that skill shot goes off, it's going to increase our critical strike rate even further, so we're going to deal even more damage, and that 2-second window can mean the difference between life and death for the unit. So that is why he goes first. I know, Piranha, yours is the other way around, and it does work the other way around, which I will explain in the summary. The first trained skill, to literally no one's surprise, we will be putting in a critical strike rating of 10%. So that now brings us up to a potential total of 55% chance to land a critical strike. And for his second trained skill, we've gone with Bounty Hunt, because this gives us a 40% firepower buff. Now, you don't need to specifically use Bounty Hunt. Any high level firepower buff will do. Just remember that. It is all about how high you can push that firepower buff. It doesn't specifically need to be this skill from Madame Havoc. It can be from any of the other officers. So, on to the aid. And naturally we're going to pick Lady Justice. Why are we going to pick Lady Justice over anyone else? And that is because she gives us a base critical strike rating of 15%, which means as it stands, we have, once the tactical skill is deployed, a base critical strike rating of 70%. Okay, so we could use Golden Eagle and then train this in, but why would we use Lady of Justice? So remember back to the tech tree, where if we scored a critical strike in the modern tech tree, we would slow the enemy target. Now, her awakened skill upgrades the tactical skill, and this blasts the enemy with a shotgun, and it deals a reduction of 50% troop speed for 6 seconds on a target, as well as the 1500 damage coefficient. It also increases the damage intensity and the troop speed by 15% for 6 seconds. So again, if we decided to go down the road of damage intensity over firepower for the trained skills, we've got another skill that backs that build. So it is personal preference. Personally, I would go for the firepower for this build over the damage intensity, but if you prefer to use the damage intensity side of things, I won't judge. We also have a firepower buff of 30%, which is pretty high, but while you are inside active Alliance territory, that goes up by an additional 5%. Why is that important? Well, that means for pop-out attacks, where you exit the base, fire a shot, and enter your base, you get an additional 5% firepower. That is actually quite handy if there's an AG surrounding you, or an AG coming towards you, or an AG going past you. Very, very, very handy. We do get a damage resistance buff of 20%, but this is really not that important, to be perfectly honest. We're more interested in the 1500 damage coefficient, which we can now add to the potential total output of 2300, giving us a potential total output of 3800 skill damage over the 2 officers, potentially within 10 seconds of attacking an enemy target. So we are going to deal high amounts of skill damage in a sustained fight, whether that be defensive, applied via an AG if you've donated the unit, or if you are using the unit to deliberately micromanage and flank and attack targets, or do pop-out attacks and the enemy has decided to just simply not shoot you for whatever reasons, because they're mongs. So for the first trained skilled, we've gone with automation protocols. Now, yes, I know there is an extremely high probability that you have Ventura on your siege gun. So if you do have Ventura on your siege gun and you are unable to train this skill specifically, which is a skill boost, remember that, it is a skill boost, which is why we've chosen it. We can go for this one instead, which is a firepower of 15% and an HP of 15%. Okay, so this is literally in a world where you're not using that artillery officer. And for the final train skill, we're looking at a firepower buff of 20% and a troop speed buff of 5%. This is almost a requirement that you get this skill, and it is also a requirement that you get it to level 5. Now, mine's not at level 5, obviously, because I'm not running a helicopter, but if I was running a Vanguard helicopter with this build, I would almost certainly need this, because the 5% speed boost is going to make up the deficit where you're just going to be able to keep up with the enemy Vanguard tanks. And you've got to remember, we've also got 2 speed debuff effects, one coming off of the critical strike from the tech tree, and we've got the second one coming off of this officer if she manages to deploy her tactical skill. Sorry, I said critical strike twice. I meant to say penetrating strike. When it's a penetrating strike, they get the speed debuff. I think I said that at the start of this section. I'll just amend that now before we go any further. So anyone who has watched this far, I caught it in time. I will leave this in during the editing process for you. Even I make mistakes. Especially I make mistakes. Trust me, if you guys are getting confused by this game, don't think I'm not. It's easy to make mistakes in this game. Very easy. Anyway, on to the summary. How does this tank work? How does this tank hunter work, I should say? How does this helicopter work? Well, it works very simply by leveraging critical strikes in order to hit extremely hard. So in the event of a pop-out attack, we have a base rate of 50%, I think, of your critical strike rating, and if you get the tactical skill to go off, it goes up by another 20%, up to 70%. So we have up to potentially 70% chance to land a critical strike. What does that translate into? Well, that means 1 in 2 before your tactical skill is applied is a guaranteed shot. So you fire a shot, not a crit, you fire another shot, it's going to be a crit. There's a very high chance it's going to be a crit. you've got a 1 in 4 chance of it not being a crit. So yeah, pretty good. This makes it absolutely excellent at pop-out attacks. As I said, if something's driving past your base, if something is out in the open, you can fire a single shot. The likelihood is it's going to deal a lot of damage. Now, how do I know it's going to deal a lot of damage? If we remember back to the advanced tech tree, it said a 5% critical strike rating as base with a 50% damage bonus. Well, if you add the 50% onto the standard 150% bonus, you get your 200% bonus. That's assuming it is not 50% of 150, and it is a 50% damage bonus that is added to the 150% damage bonus. But that's splitting hairs. Let's just, for sake of argument and maths, just say it is a flat 200, which is actually ironically the worst case scenario. We're still dealing 200% your normal attack damage. So if your normal attack hits for 100, guess what? You're hitting for 200% more than that. Which is, you know, that's all of a sudden, ooh, you know. And you've got to remember, you can penetrate the target as well. And if you do penetrate the target is automatically slowed. It's not going to get away from you. That is helicopters, that is light tanks, that is MBTs. They're not going to be able to escape providing you hit them with a penetrating attack. Now, obviously, your penetration rating is going to be extremely high, so you are going to penetrate them. The units you're not going to be able to penetrate, infantry, doesn't matter, you're faster than them. Artillery, doesn't matter, you're faster than them. The super heavy, doesn't matter, because guess what, you're faster than them as well. Also, you can move in a direct line, they cannot. Now, I said at the start of the video that you might be able to deal damage to infantry with this build. That's obvious because we are going to be dealing a lot of critical strike. We're not relying so heavily on the penetration damage, which we have done in previous builds. We're relying very, very, very much on the critical strike rating to leverage that 200% bonus, and we're also relying on the firepower so we can drop high levels of skill damage on our target, which includes infantry. Infantry are by no means immune to skill damage. I know that some people think that they are, and I assure you they're not. I run infantry, I should know. Infantry are just like any other units. You can absolutely smack them into oblivion with high enough skill attack. And that's what we're going for with this helicopter. Do I suggest that you engage infantry out in the open? No. Don't be daft. Never ever exchange rounds with this build. It will not work. If you are receiving damage, the attack has failed. You need to withdraw immediately. So do not exchange rounds. Only hit them. This is more so the case with this build than any of the other helicopter builds we've done, or even the light tank build. The other builds we could leverage other skills to get out of dodge pretty quick. With this, not so much. We're not relying on being able to trade hits like an MBT does. This is very much a critical strike and skill damage based hit. It's going to work really, really well as a donor unit because they're going to love having this thing in an AG. The chances of it being singly targeted out are very slim, which means it's pretty much free to deal damage. Also, it's a fairly slow helicopter, so there's a very low probability of it being at the front. We have a lot of potential to micromanage this as a pop-out unit, as a unit to flank and destroy tanks that are moving. If they're not paying attention to you, that's even better. We're going to be able to use that critical strike rating to pretty much one-hit any artillery piece we come across. So don't be afraid to use this helicopter and donate your other units. This one is for you. This, if it does boil down to it, you're a donor person, you like to give out to AGs, there isn't a person on the planet who is not going to say, hey, I don't want your helicopter. this thing is going to be lethal. I know it's going to be lethal because I've recommended this build to people in the past and they've all said the same thing. This helicopter slaps. Yes, it does. It also gets slapped is the next thing they always say, and I always follow up with, yes, it does. It doesn't have any HP, it doesn't have any damage resistance, it is just a straight up glass cannon build. Now, alluding to what I said in regards to Piranha earlier, I noticed that he had the officers the other way around. It does work that way around. All you're doing differently in that instance is you are delaying the bonus critical strike rating to bring it from 50 up to 70%, which is almost a guaranteed chance that you're going to get a critical strike. Bear in mind it's 70%. You're pretty close to 2 in every 3 shots instead of 1 in every 2 shots being a critical strike rating. Sorry, a critical strike hit. Now it does work the other way around because you are applying the skill damage from Lady of Justice first, which then obviously comes with the damage intensity bonus increase, the damage reduction, the damage resistance bonus, and speed reduction being applied to the target as well. So technically, you can deal more unit damage that way. Personally, I think it is better to have the critical strike rating go off first and then have the debuff applied. But it does work the other way around. It 100% works the other way around. Does it work better? No, it doesn't work better. It works differently. So the end result will be the same if the enemy is not looking at you. The damage output will be roughly the same. You're probably looking at maybe a higher intensity, but you're going to be sacrificing a higher critical strike, which means a lower damage output. Potato. I'd rather have the critical strike rating first, as that also means we can feed into the chance on hit for the critical strike to deploy the 400 skill damage bonus. It's just a personal preference. Don't shoot the messenger. But that's how I would do the build. This is the Eagle, everyone. It swoops in out of nowhere and absolutely wrecks its opponent and then just goes, I'm finished eating, bye. So anyway, that's that. Thanks very much for watching. I've been the Smoking Cheddar. You have been very patient. There'll be a link to the Discord in the description box down below. As always, you're welcome to come and join us. But if you do, please remember to be an adult about it. We like to bully each other over there on the regular.